Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I hope you guys are doing well and that you are staying warm and dry. Where I'm at, it's literally a wintry mix. I just drove home from the office and I stepped outside and I'm like, I got to get to my YouTube. And I got in the car, and as I began to drive, I realized it's slick. It's cold, and it is literally winter. I think we skipped fall. We went straight to winter. So I hope you guys are doing all right, that you're warm, dry, that you're having a good Friday. Thank you for waiting for me. I usually do these live chats at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, not 7 o'clock. But on top of seeing clients today and the weather, I've been pushed back. So let's go ahead and just tune in. I see you guys chatting away there and saying hello. I'm going to get to you guys. Let me start like I usually do. And then I will get to the chat box and engage you and welcome you and talk to you, see if you have any comments or questions. Let's break down this topic of the psychology of betrayal. I recently, and I'm going to post her information in the description box, but I recently did a podcast interview with just a wonderful person who loves to explore human behavior, trauma, betrayal. The list goes on. And so we really did a deep dive of what it's like to be betrayed, feel betrayed, and also experience betrayal trauma multiple times in your life, from childhood to adolescence to adulthood. So that podcast interview probably isn't going to come out until the next 2 or 3 months, but I'm going to post her information and her website and Instagram handle so you can have information. So as soon as that podcast is posted, I'm going to make sure I post it on my channel so that you can see it. But tonight is a little bit of a deeper dive into the psychology of betrayal. And we're not just talking about betrayal in a relationship that has a romantic nature, that has a friendship nature. We're actually talking about betrayal that happens and often begins within a family context that is dysfunctional and toxic and unhealthy. And of course, I'm going to bring in those other relationships because they're important as well. Betrayal trauma, the term I'm going to say was, I'm going to say coined or developed or highlighted or spoken about very in depth by Jennifer Freed in 1994. I'm going to say 1994 to 1996. And Jennifer, hopefully I'm saying her last name correctly, Jennifer Freed basically stated in a research study that had been done on betrayal that a relationship often suffers when an individual has engaged in any kind of toxic, unhealthy behavior that has led up to a betrayal. A betrayal, according to Freed, has to have two conditions that are met. Condition number one is that you have to be in a relationship where there is an expectation of confidentiality, privacy, respect, and some kind of mutual trusted bond. There has to be that. There has to be a respect for and a mutual experience of trust, privacy, confidentiality, respect. Trust and really connecting to another individual is at the foundation of any relationship, right? And it is often at the foundation, I'll put it that way. It's at the foundation of a relationship before someone decides to betray, right? The expectation is we're going into this relationship, whether that's a romantic one, a professional one, a friendship, a family member. This relationship in and of itself has already built within it the expectation that there's going to be respect, There's going to be privacy. There's going to be confidentiality. There is going to be mutuality or reciprocity in a way that respects both of our needs. So trust. Now, trust can be broken with an individual, within a family, or even within an institution. So Freed basically stated that an institution like a church, a hospital, any kind of organization that should already be trustworthy can violate your trust and cause betrayal trauma. The second condition that needs to be met to experience betrayal trauma is there has to be a dependency. And a dependency would be I'm financially dependent, I'm emotionally and psychologically dependent, I am dependent on my mother and my father to raise me, to love me, to care for me, to make sure that all of my basic needs are met. There's a dependency there. And that's what often causes the betrayal trauma. There's an expectation that in this relationship, we are trustworthy. There's privacy, confidentiality. We both have a reciprocal responsibility to mind this relationship in a positive way. The second condition is that dependency, that there's a dependency in this relationship. I depend on you in some capacity. And now you have betrayed me, whether that's through deception and lies, whether that's through an affair, right? Emotional, intimate affair, sexual affair. You may also feel violated because maybe an institution or a friend or a person that you love and care about and depend on, maybe they have said things behind your back. Maybe they've lied on you. Maybe they have spread rumors. Maybe they have triangulated, right? All of these are what we call betrayals. Now, there is some research around betrayal trauma that categorizes degrees of betrayal. There's high betrayal trauma, moderate betrayal trauma, and then there's low betrayal trauma. So there are levels of betrayal trauma. And really, if you ask me, this is more of a subjective experience, right? Because even as a therapist, I can't, have you come into my office, sit with me, talk to me about your traumatic experience and the betrayal that you have experienced at the hands of someone that you trusted fully. You didn't think they would do anything to harm you. And I say to you, oh, that's a low betrayal trauma. That's a moderate betrayal trauma. Oh, that's a high betrayal trauma. I don't see that happening. There has to be some kind of, part of this that's subjective. It's opinionated. It's your experience. And so you are going to be the one that would say to me, this is a high betrayal trauma. And we're going to talk about some of the research a little bit later, because some research suggests that women and men experience betrayal trauma at different rates. And so what you may categorize as a high betrayal trauma, a man, a husband, a brother, a male friend, a boss may state that his betrayal trauma is low. Okay, so there's some gender differences. So this topic gets a little deeper, right? If you Google betrayal trauma, you're going to get a bunch of articles. But what you're probably not going to get is correct, sound, research, concrete-based information on betrayal trauma, because a lot of people, as they do in psychology, in many different topics and areas, they kind of create their own world on Google. And so, you may get blog posts, you may get somebody that really doesn't understand the research, the science, try to explain this. And so as I was doing some research for this video, like a refresher course for myself for this live chat and a video, I'm going to have a video for you guys coming up next week on this topic. I found myself like, where's the clinical research? Like, this is all blog based, Instagram post based. And it's like, no, this is not good, because betrayal trauma has a lot of serious research that backs it up as a legitimate experience that you can have. As a matter of fact, betrayal trauma is really rooted in attachment theory. The idea says that I am attached emotionally and psychologically to you, and even spiritually. And so anything that you do to me is going to cause a reaction that is negative, right? Because if you're going to hurt me, lie to me, deceive me, mismanage the boundaries within the relationship, whatever relationship that is, it's not a healthy attachment. It is now a situation of abuse and manipulation, pathological lying and deception, right? And deep rooted manipulation. And so there's a lot of research that backs this theory up, that we're also dealing with attachment. If you have, for example, childhood trauma where mom and dad were very abusive to you, maybe not physically, maybe not sexually, maybe whatever the case, it's abuse, right? And it all hurts. So let's say you have childhood trauma of your parents abusing you, and you, over time, you begin to emotionally detach from your parents, because that's the only way that you can survive, right? You may become an adult who has really difficult attachment style, avoidant, anxious, disorganized attachment, where you don't really know how you want to be in the relationship, right? That attachment problem or difficulties or challenges can then spill over into your adult relationships. And if you're betrayed, on top of already having attachment issues, what do you think we're dealing with? We're dealing with a double whammy, if you will, right? So this has a lot of deep-rooted research in attachment theory. Let me also say, too, that betrayal trauma is really how you process and remember betrayal at the hands of somebody that, one, you trusted, and two, you had a dependency on. That is really the short definition of betrayal trauma. Not the simple experience of being betrayed. That can be painful and hurtful too. But a lot of us don't experience betrayal that is traumatizing. So there's a difference there, and I should differentiate that. We all most likely have been betrayed in some way, whether we know it or not, but that doesn't always lead to betrayal trauma. In the cases where there is betrayal trauma, the simple definition is it's how you process and remember the betrayal at the hands of a person that you, number one, trusted and had a dependency on, a father and a mother you had a dependency on, a husband or a wife that you share a home with, your finances are intertwined, you have said vows to each other, you have decided to be committed and monogamous, right? That is a dependency. You have developed some kind of emotional, psychological, and physical dependency. So it's how you remember and process a betrayal, that, one, at the hands of a person that you trusted, number two, at somebody that you depended on, okay? And that dependency can be in many different ways. It can even be financial, right? And we'll get into that a little bit later as well. Let me also say, before I go to the chat box and welcome you and see what you guys are saying and engage you a little bit, let me also say that sometimes the greater the exposure to betrayal trauma and the greater the exposure to cumulative trauma, the more related to psychological challenges you can be. So let me break that down a little bit. Cumulative trauma, which is sometimes complex PTSD, can really make betrayal trauma that much worse, right? Imagine having cumulative experiences of trauma. I have childhood trauma. I was then in a traumatic situation in a car crash, or, we were snowed in for days, didn't have food, didn't have electricity, almost died. So let's say you've had that kind of a traumatic experience. Next traumatic experience is I lost a loved one violently. They were murdered, killed, kidnapped. The list goes on, held hostage. Okay. Next trauma might be, I started dating this guy at 16. He hit me, he sexually abused me. And when my parents took he and his family to court, he got off on the sexual assault or sexual rape. Okay. That's another trauma. You get to adulthood. Let's say you have decided to marry somebody. You've trusted them. You guys have put your lives together. But for the next 5 years of your life, he or she has decided to have multiple affairs. And you just found out that you now have a sexually transmitted disease. Cumulative trauma, right? Since childhood, I have had trauma multiple times in my life. And they have had a great impact on my ability to trust, on my feelings of safety and security, right? And my dependency upon multiple relationships or situations had been shaken by the reality of the trauma. So the greater the exposure to trauma, the more likely you are to experience depression, anxiety, dissociation, complex PTSD and PTSD, obsessive compulsive disorder, right? And you may even develop some form of a personality disorder later in life. Okay. All right. I see you guys chatting. I better go to the chat box. Let me also say before we go to the chat box, tonight's conversation, I'm going to try to really minimize this into a nice ball of concrete information so that we can stay focused and it's not all over the place. Because I noticed that anytime I have to discuss or I'm invited somewhere to discuss betrayal trauma, there's so much that can be put into the mix that you could kind of feel like, oh my God, what did we just talk about? Right? Because it's so big of a topic. So I'm going to try my very hardest to keep this as structured as possible. I'm going to give you some common themes of a personality that has engaged in betrayal. I also want to mention the research behind this and how this all impacts you, right? What is the psychology behind how betrayal trauma impacts you? So we're going to get into that, okay? All right, guys, let me go back to the beginning here. And say hello, Michelle Lynn. So glad you're looking forward to this conversation. And thank you so much for that. I'm so touched by all of your messages and comments to me all throughout the week. Thank you so much for that. I'm so grateful and so glad to have you guys on the channel. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Ellie Wynn, hello and welcome. Ellie Wynn says, when you trust someone to have your back and instead they harm you substantially. Yes, that is betrayal trauma. Absolutely. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Thank you for that. Phoenix, hello and welcome. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. Phoenix says, how do you get over the betrayal of your mom when she never truly apologizes? Always says, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, or I'm sorry you feel that way, or flips the script and paints you as a villain for getting so upset and just wants you to get over it and basically acts like it never happened. Okay, so let me break this down because this is like a run-on paragraph, which I totally get what you're saying. So let me target this in terms of a person who never fully apologizes. There's a loss of accountability with that, right? A true apology, and sometimes I'll say this to my kiddos that come and see me for therapy. Sometimes I'll say, nope, let's start over. If I hear them say, I'm sorry, but nope, stop. If I hear them say, I'm sorry because I stop them then as well. Nope, let's go back and think about our apology. Sometimes people will say, and they said this in front of me in sessions also, I'm sorry that I did this to you, but I'm sorry you took it that way. That's another thing I've heard. That's not what I meant, so you shouldn't be offended. Or they may say something like, as I told you before, I apologize. No, I think all of those are incorrect ways to say, I'm sorry. I don't mean to do what I do, right? I apologize. I need to change my behavior. Those are all fake ways of apologizing. A true apology says this, that I take 100% responsibility in this moment for what I have done. I was wrong. I know I have possibly made you feel a certain way. And I don't know what I was thinking when I said or did A, B, and C. I know I am wrong for that. I truly do feel wrong for that. And I need to change my behavior. I ask that you forgive me. And I ask that you truly and honestly give me time to correct my behavior. Boom. Honest apology. The minute I hear, but, maybe, I didn't mean, you shouldn't have took it that way, I don't know what you're talking about, those are all fake apologies, right? Anytime a person apologizes and they say it too fast, they don't acknowledge all the different ways they could have harmed you, they don't acknowledge their reality, the fact that they have already processed how they have impacted you, and the fact that they haven't fully processed that I continue to say I'm sorry and I continue to do the very same thing I apologize for. That tells me if they can't honestly look at that, then it's not a real apology. I think, and most therapists would probably agree with this, I think that a true apology needs to happen, not always in that moment. Sometimes a true apology has to happen months later, weeks later, minutes later, moments later, after that person has fully processed the totality of what they have done to you. And if they have betrayed you, they need to acknowledge that in the many different ways they've betrayed you, right? A true apology really is heartfelt, and it takes into consideration the many components of that betrayal, that trauma, that pain, that lie, whatever, that deception, whatever they've done to you. So Phoenix, in a nutshell, without creating a whole new live chat here, in a nutshell, mom should be able to step back, process, digest, right? And then sit with you in an honest, raw way and say, this is what I've done to you. I need to fix my behavior, and here's how I'm going to do it. And I think it's even wonderful for a parent, especially a parent, to ask that you give them time to work on it and fix it, right? Sometimes I'm sorry just doesn't feel like I'm sorry, and you know that. Sometimes I'm sorry feels like I just want you to forget what I did. Let's move on. No, that's not how that goes. No. Okay, I digress, because I can go into a whole new live chat with this. Sun and Sunflowers, I hope that makes sense, Phoenix. Sun and Sunflowers, hello, and welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm glad to see you. Sun and Sunflowers says, someone to say they care for you, they are your friend, and expect loyalty, but are disloyal, backbite, lie on you, and mistreat you. Yes, again, remember that there's a foundation of trust as number one condition, and number two condition is there's a dependency. I'll break this down as we go along. A seat at a king's table with Tanisha. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Happy Friday to you. I know I say this every Friday. I'm looking forward to bunny slippers. I hope you guys are too. Elizabeth, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Kev Dower, hello and welcome. Love the new screen, picture, not the screen name, the screen picture. Very interesting. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. It reminds me of someone from Sesame Street, even though I know that's not true. Fifi LaFleur, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Always glad to see you. Jeanette, hello. Thank you so much for posting some additional information on Jennifer Freed. I'm probably saying that wrong, knowing me. Hello, Access to Rome. Glad to see you. Welcome. I see you have a different photo as well. You guys are switching this up on me here. Orlando, glad to see you back in another live chat. Welcome, welcome. Cam, glad to see you. Welcome. Yeah, it is rainy here too in Pennsylvania. Ohio, I think, is rainy as well. Hello, Tammy. So glad to see you tonight. Yeah, happy weekend to you as well. Okay. Ronald Zion, glad to see you. Welcome back, my friend. I'm glad to see you. Yes, Elizabeth, I'm going to post you on the screen just to let you know that I see what you're saying. No worries at all, right? We all have things that get in the way of our response times, and the list goes on. So no worries at all. James McDonald, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in another live chat. James McDonald says betrayal trauma has everlasting wounds that may take a lifetime to heal from. It may take a lifetime to heal from. And believe it or not, and I know you know this, James, it may take a lifetime to actually break it down, understand it, and fully process it, right? We're going to get into that in a little bit. Sigma, ooh, there we go. Sigma INFJ, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. So glad to see you. Kim says, before we go back to the content, Kim says, the betrayal came when years of pent-up criticism came out. Never thought I would have a fractured relationship with some members of the family. I assumed they were in our corner the whole time. Yeah, absolutely. We all assume that, right? We assume that family is the number one place that we can be safe in. Research suggests in psychology that number one, the same gender parent is the most important parent in a child's life, right? Dad is the most important figure for his son. Mom is the most important figure for her daughter. Research also suggests that early childhood relationships, starting from the moment the baby is placed on mom and dad's chest for skin to skin contact, right? At that very moment, that relationship, that parent-child relationship is the most important relationship that there is in that child's life. Why? Because it sets the stage for how relationships are to be handled, managed, engaged in, respected, right, in adulthood. And so those are two important things. So it doesn't shock me that most of us kind of have this preconceived notion about family, that family is where it's supposed to be safe at all times, right? And unfortunately and sadly, that is just absolutely not the case. And I think we're finding that out as we develop as a society. Let me also say, before I look at a couple more comments here, let me also say that our society has kind of manipulated us through pop psychology, through television shows like Full House and Family Matters and Mama's Family, The Cosby Show, I'm sure there's many more. The world has also kind of manipulated us through books and magazines and even music, holidays, right? My cell phone, for some odd reason, wasn't hooking up to my car tonight on my way home. And I had to literally, I was forced, okay, guys, because I'm really not ready for Christmas music. I was forced to listen to a Christmas station. And being the therapist that I am, I typically can't turn it off. I'm driving and I'm listening to these lyrics, and every Christmas song that comes on is about family, getting in front of the fireplace, right? Roasting chestnuts and eating family holiday food, being with somebody that you love, falling in love with someone around Christmas time. We have been so manipulated as human beings in our society to this concept that family is everything, family time is everything, romance is everything, love around Christmas time is everything. And as we're going to talk about in tomorrow's live chat, stay tuned for that, because I'm going to be talking about going no contact over the holidays and how that is and the psychology of that. All of that, right, guys? All of that just kind of keeps you stuck in this mindset. Family is a wonderful, beautiful thing. I love it. I think it's so wonderful, but only when it's healthy, only when it's mutual. And the same thing with romance and relationships. But I'm listening to these lyrics, guys, and I'm like, this is not okay. So, this hurts somebody that doesn't have that. And the majority of our world doesn't have that. So in a nutshell, Kim, because I don't want to rant here, in a nutshell, this whole concept of family and relationships and love and romance and holidays. And, all of that can kind of put us in this mindset that we are to trust at all times just because it's family, it's love, and that is not the reality. The reality is family is complicated. Family is not everything if they hurt you, right? And if they are unhealthy to you and your mental health is at stake. Relationships do entail pain. It's not all beautiful and hearts and marshmallows, So, we really do need to turn our thinking around so that we won't be as in shock, Cam, as, you expressed to us. Okay. Eccentric. Oh God, what did I do? Hold on, guys. Bear with me. I hit the wrong button. Okay. Okay. Dina Da Vinci, I'm going to start back with you. Hello and welcome. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm just pushing all the wrong buttons here. Eccentric, hello and welcome. Glad to see you and Dina in tonight's live chat. Empowered Woman, hello and welcome. Haven't seen you in a while, so glad to see you. Empowered Woman asks, can you heal when the person doesn't apologize but want to go on gaslighting you? I think you can. I think you can heal without an apology. And that's a whole other live chat. We may talk about that tomorrow. I think you can heal. You really don't need that other person to be accountable, to be responsible for what they've done so that you can heal. I really and honestly believe that healing is an inside process first. And then, maybe that person may say, I'm sorry. Really, it's a process, and maybe I will talk about this tomorrow. It's a process to forgive. It's a process to heal without that other person's awareness of what they have done to you. I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to go on and go on and go on and we miss time. I may bring that up tomorrow. Okay, guys, let me get back into the content, then I'll go back to talking with you and engaging you and welcoming you. What are some common personality themes? Let me get some water. Hold on, guys. I literally have not had water for hours. Okay. Common themes. Excuse me. Common themes that tends to be at the core of betrayal trauma. Typically a personality pathology. A personality pathology is really a personality that has developed in a way that's unhealthy. The ability to manage and engage in healthy relationships, communication, boundaries, reciprocal and mutual relationships, all of that is compromised when a person has a personality pathology. A personality pathology may be narcissistic personality. It may be sociopathy or antisocial personality disorder. It may be an avoidant personality, right? There's something going on in this person's personality that is a pathology. It is an illness. There's an instability. This person doesn't have the capability to change and adjust in the ways that a healthy personality could, right? We all get mad. We all get hurt. We all feel hurt. We all experience, wanting to stand our ground and advocate for ourselves. We all have the experience of feeling brokenhearted and not trusting or wanting to avoid certain people and relationships. We all have sometimes this rigid personality, like an obsessive compulsive tendency. But people who have a personality pathology, they are that way for an extended period of time. It's a chronic, pervasive pattern of acting and behaving in life, right? The individual with a personality pathology may not just have betrayed you. It could be that they've betrayed you, they've betrayed mom, they've betrayed dad, they've betrayed their cousin, their boss, their girlfriend, their ex-wife, right? Their therapist, their dentist. It could be just about anybody, right, guys, that an individual with a personality pathology can hurt. It's not just you. So it's a pervasive chronic pattern of behavior that tends to happen in multiple scenarios, right? Think about somebody that is a a borderline personality or somebody who's an antisocial personality, their characteristics didn't just start showing with you. They've been this way for a long time. If you think about betrayal and domestic violence, or a situation where there's relationship or intimate partner violence or aggression or abuse, that individual who is abusing you, harming you, betraying you, treating you like dirt, really treating you like your mind and your heart and your soul doesn't matter. You're not the first person that they've treated that way. Typically, his or her mom and dad already know they are like that. Typically, his or her brother and sister already know that he's like that or she's like that, right? The personality pathology just didn't begin with you. It's probably been this way in the past, as quiet as it is sometimes kept. The other common theme here is an individual who may have betrayed you in some fashion, may have a kind of psychopathy or sociopathy at the core of their behavior. There's a callous, cold piece of who they are that may intentionally or unintentionally foster or nurture traumatic bonding or some kind of dependency or very codependent bond that keeps you a victim to them for a long period of time. An abuser will love you one moment or 1 minute and hit and beat you up or say mean things and harmful things or psychologically abuse you the next. They'll say, I love you. I'm sorry. I don't know what got into me. Why would I say that and do that? I feel bad. Sometimes they even go to therapy just to prove that they are sorry. That's not really the truth, but they will do that. They'll buy you nice things, right? Give you flowers, hold your hand, be very romantic, be very loving and caring. If this is a family member, you may also find yourself, being texted all day, every day. This family member is really trying to pull you back in. And because you are a caring, loving person, you can then, be pulled in. And so they've reeled you in. They've thrown the fishing hook out there. They've reeled you back in. Now here you go again, showing love and affection. And everything between the two of you, right, seems to be okay until the next moment, which is when now they are manipulating everybody around you. They're spreading rumors and lies about you. They are deceiving you, and they may actively be in the mode of trying to hurt you, right? And so there's this off and on personality that these individuals can have, those who betray you. And that can be traumatic bonding, where you're kind of confused as to what you're dealing with, right? I love you 1 minute, and the next minute I'm being forced to just be, in this mode of not liking you and who you are at this moment. So traumatic bonding can be intentionally nurtured within you, right? It can also be unintentionally. They may not necessarily know what they're doing, but they're kind of fostering this part of you that's confused about who they really are, right? So there's this cold and callousness at the core of who they are. They may also be very nonchalant. They abuse you, they betray you, they harm you, and then they walk around like it's no big thing. Yes, it is a big thing. You've done A, B, and C to me. And maybe this is the third, fourth, fifth, or 100th time that they have done this to you. But they may feel and come across as very nonchalant. And that is scary, right? Let me also say, too, that a common theme with these individuals is that you're not the first person that they have betrayed. You're not the first person that they have probably deceived. Most of these individuals who have betrayed somebody else, they wear a mask. Behind closed doors, they're another way. In front of the world and other people, that mask goes back on. And every time that mask goes on, it can cause within you this confusion, where you may find yourself asking, who in the world are you? And once you do find out that you have been sorely betrayed, you may begin to experience something that's known as betrayal blindness. Now, you may be saying, what in the world is betrayal blindness? Well, in a nutshell, it's survival. I know that you're a betrayer. I know you've done this multiple times. You're a repeat offender. And I know that you don't have my best interest at heart, but I depend on you. And I don't know what I'm going to do if I have to walk away from you. So what do? I put these blinders on, right? Like sunglasses, rose-colored glasses. I act like I don't see anything that's happening. I act like I don't know what's happening. And I'm doing this sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, in an attempt to survive. Can you imagine that, guys? Have you guys experienced that? I can see how that can happen. I have about 900 million clients, to be facetious, but I have a lot of clients now, and I've had them in the past who are dealing with betrayal blindness. Sometimes it's an unintentional process. Imagine a child. I have a little sweet baby who's 3 years old, comes to see me for therapy. And, my play therapy with her is we need to develop the ability to deal with reality, to possibly use play as a way to kind of unwind her mind from all the trauma lies or the lies and all the deception that she's been around at 3 years old, But there's betrayal blindness even with this young person, 3. Can you imagine that? I do believe that you can experience betrayal blindness at even a very, very young age. How? Because you don't know how to perceive, let's say, for example, a parent who is sexually violating you and next minute they're feeding you and getting you dressed and taking you to school. So what does the brain do to cause itself to survive? It automatically sometimes says, I have to survive. I rely on this person for food and clothing and comfort and safety and fear from the outdoor elements. So the brain says, you know what? I'm not being sexually abused. I'm not. In an older person, an older child, an adolescent, a grown-up, you may find yourself intentionally refuse to look at reality in an attempt to survive. So it's a blindness, a betrayal blindness. Now, let me briefly go over research, and then I'm going to go back to the chat box before I give you some information on how this impacts you over time. Research suggests that there are 3 kinds of betrayal trauma: high, moderate, low. High, moderate, and low betrayal trauma. If you have high, moderate betrayal trauma, there is a relationship between that and poor mental health outcomes. So in other words, the more betrayal trauma that you experience, high betrayal trauma, moderate betrayal trauma, dealing with depression, anxiety, dissociation, PTSD, OCD, even psychotic disorders like schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, sometimes delusional disorder. All of those things can come up in your world and become a mental health concern for you because you've dealt over and over and over with betrayal, right? There's a cumulative trauma. There's a cumulative experience. And on top of that, now you have betrayal trauma, which then exacerbates the depression, exacerbates the anxiety, the dissociation, the post-traumatic stress disorder, right? The other part of research, and I don't know if there's clarity on this yet, but there are gender differences that depending on how you appraise a situation, evaluate a situation, identify what's going on, it may determine how impactful that situation is. So let's say, for example, you as a woman, you've experienced betrayal trauma at the hands of all of your romantic partners, right? And you may consider it high betrayal trauma. Maybe you're a female that has dealt with domestic violence. Maybe you're a female that has dealt with being cheated on. There was an affair. Maybe you're a female who has experienced multiple affairs at the hands of somebody that vowed to you and said that they would never have an affair on you, right? So let's say that's you as a woman. It's likely that your self-appraisal of the entire situation and of yourself as well, is negative. And that can greatly impact you. A negative self-appraisal could be something like having negative thoughts about why that person had an affair on you, having negative thoughts about your ability to be lovable and cared for and respected, right? That's a self-appraisal, a self-evaluation. And if it's negative and you're a female, right, research is suggesting that the trauma may be greater. It can also happen with a man as well, right? If he's had betrayal at the hands of his mom, betrayal at the hands of several girlfriends, and betrayal at the hands of his wife, he's experiencing most likely a negative self-appraisal. He's now asking, why wasn't she happy with me? Why did she feel the need to have all these affairs? Why did my mom feel the need to betray me and put me in foster care? Why did my grandmother never reach out to me, right? I must be a bad person. I must be unlovable. Those are all negative self-appraisals. So research suggests that that's an actual thing. Let me also say high betrayal trauma may also be categorized as physical violence or family violence and abuse, emotional abuse. That would be considered a high betrayal trauma. Physical or family violence and emotional abuse. Relational aggression. Let me also add that in there as well. Relational aggression, family violence, and emotional abuse are all categories that is really hard to get out of, right? If you are a 15-year-old who is living in a household where there's high betrayal trauma, dad's had multiple affairs on mom, dad never tells me the truth, mom lies, my sister lied as well. Now we're in foster care or going to foster care, right? There's multiple layers of betrayal trauma there. There's also relational and family aggression there as well. And so all of that can create ongoing trauma that can turn into complex PTSD, that can turn into post-traumatic stress disorder, right? It's so many layers when it comes to betrayal trauma, right? Okay. Briefly, let me also mention in research that there is some research to suggest multiple offenses of trauma can also lead to betrayal trauma. So if you've had cumulative traumas over time, and maybe you've been diagnosed, if you're in a country that diagnoses this, maybe you've been diagnosed complex PTSD, that can add to the entire traumatic experience of being betrayed. And so you may find yourself experiencing multiple offenses, and that can be traumatic in and of itself. Okay, let me go back to the chat box, connect with you, communicate with you guys, and then I'm going to tell you how this impacts you. How does betrayal trauma impact your mind and your heart and your soul? So we're going to talk about that in just a minute here. Charles Bukowski, I hope I said that correctly. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. Charles says, I'm sorry you feel that way. He's quoting what I said earlier, that sometimes family members will and can say, I'm sorry you feel that way. Charles says, is what they call a classic, I don't even know how to say that whole word together, Charles. Pathology? Is that what it is? Somebody help me. Yeah. Wow. Well, Charles, let me also just say too, because this can be a little bit, the way that I'm reading it is a little bit complex for me. It's a little bit confusing, but let me just say that a lot of people who are dealing with betrayal trauma, they have been kind of trapped in a relationship where, and you may understand this as well, they're trapped in a relationship where the other person who's causing the betrayal and the harm and the trauma, they don't want to acknowledge their role in anything. And because of that, they will say, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I don't know if you've been in this position ever before. Most likely you have if you're in tonight's live chat. It really just puts it in your lap, right? It says, here, you hold it. I don't want to hold it, right? I don't think I need to hold responsibility here. So sorry you feel that way. Elizabeth says, I'm sorry you took it that way. She says, I hate that phrase. It puts blame on the victim. Yes, it does. Yes. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Jeremy Robinson says, and I also, Elizabeth, I hate that as well. I just hate it. When I hear family members who see me for therapy, when I hear them say that, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. Sometimes they don't mean it the way it comes across, but other times it's like, oh my God, no. Don't say that, because now you're putting all the pressure on the other person. Jeremy Robinson, hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. Says, I confronted my mom for the things that she has done to me, and I'm sorry if I did something to hurt you. Yeah, sometimes that's what they say as well. I'm sorry if I did something to hurt you. Yeah, that can sound a little distant as well. She may not mean it that way, or maybe she does. I don't know. But to say, I'm sorry if I did something to make you feel that way, or to say, I'm sorry if I hurt you, also kind of pushes that blame off of them onto you. It's a very sneaky, sneaky way. Guys, let me grab my water. Okay, hold on. I'm just right across from it. My goodness. I swear I did 7 hours today. So I had 7 clients. Usually I see 12 or 13, depending on how insane the day is, for lack of a better term. And sometimes I don't get to go to the potty and I don't get to drink water. A side note to kind of give us a mental break here. Did you know psychologists, therapists, doctors, lawyers, and surgeons have the highest rate of kidney disease? Did you know that? You know why? Because there's never a potty break and there's hardly a water break. Excuse me. So if you're interested, let me know. I'll post that in the description box for you. Dina says, do narcissists not pick and judge other people, yet hide all the mistakes they've made in their lives? Sometimes they do hide all the mistakes that they've made in their life. Yes, they do. Why? Because they know if they tell you about all these many mistakes, betrayals, lies, deceptions, pathological behaviors, you're going to run. So they take all of this junk, right, and act like it doesn't exist until you are betrayed by them. And then it may all open up. You know, I've had people come to me for therapy where they're like, oh my God, I didn't know my husband was living this double life, right? It's a sad reality. Bossy Truthy 15, hello and welcome back. Glad to see you tonight. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to put your comment up here, Eccentric, so people can see it. Okay. Gary Bennett says, welcome to tonight's live chat, by the way, says people who deliberately target you and know what they are doing is wrong and don't apologize are truly evil psychopaths. Thanks. And I wish everyone a good weekend. Yeah, I wish you a good weekend as well. And thank you so much for being such a repeat viewer, Gary. I appreciate that. I do think it is evil. People who know they've done wrong and they don't apologize. They don't want that responsibility. They don't want that burden on their shoulders. So they act like it never happened. But I very much believe in what you reap, you sow. What you cause for somebody else, you will also get. You know, what goes around comes around. What comes around goes around. However that goes, you know? All right, so let me keep going. Yeah. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you back in tonight's live chat. How was Pennsylvania? Well, let's see. Yesterday I was in Ohio. Okay. Ohio was depressing, wet, rainy, and cold. And I just wanted to cry. And today was awful. We don't have control over God. We don't have control over the weather, right? So we kind of have to humbly say, you know what? I got to deal with this. But today it was not good. It was so cold and snowy here. So I hope you're okay wherever you are. Phoenix says, thank you for confirming what I thought about apologies. Yes, you're welcome. I don't even want to hear I'm sorry anymore. I know it's going to happen again. When I'm sorry, I feel bad for my actions. I try not to do it again. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the humble way to go about it, Phoenix, right? I hurt you once. I'm going to try my absolute best not to do this to you again. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I appreciate you for saying that. I'm glad that this is helpful and healing. Lord Fitz, I don't know if I welcomed you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to see you back. Says, my husband was supposed to follow a healthy diet in order for us to have a baby, but I found out he wasn't. When I confronted him, he lied. That's betrayal. Yeah, it is betrayal, right? Especially if you're doing what you need to do and he's not, right? Because sometimes it takes two to tango, if you know what I mean. It's like, okay, you got to get healthier. And now I have to do my process to make sure that we can then conceive a child. But in doing that, right, you need the both of you need to live in an honest way. Hey, honey, I'm sorry. I ate A, B, and C today, and I've been like this for the past month. I don't know what's gotten into me. I promise I won't do it again. Let's try again. Boom. That's simple, right? You're doing what you need to do, and he's doing what he needs to do. But it is betrayal when you think something's going on. It may not be betrayal trauma, but it's betrayal, and it's not happening. Yeah. Jamila Gibril, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. And glad to see you back. Okay, guys. Tammy Nicely, I'm just going to go look at this a few more times and then I'm going to go back to the content. Tammy Nicely says, having a heated conversation with my narc mom about all the physical abuse she put me through as a child. I told her to apologize. She did, but it wasn't genuine. And to this day, still is in denial about it. Absolutely, Tammy, because, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but, once you start saying, I deserve an apology. Once you start saying, I deserve an apology, you know what? You really need to apologize for all you've done. You really should be ashamed of yourself. Saying those things or some version of that does nothing but pushes that person to give you what you want to hear. That's really what it is. And anytime there's parents that comes into sessions with me and their child, I tell them that every time. Every time I tell them, don't mention that they need to apologize. Don't mention they should feel, ashamed. Let them be who they are. Because the minute you start doing that, then you start altering their behavior because they're going to start altering their own behavior to give you what you want to hear. And that is not the way that that's supposed to go. You know what I mean? So Tammy Nicely, I'm sure your mom just told you whatever you wanted to hear. It's a painful reality when that happens that, oh, this person's really not sorry, Raymond Vincent Garcia, hello. I had a feeling this would be a interesting topic for you. I remember past conversations. So hope this is helpful. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Hope you and your wife are doing well. Okay. Hold on, guys. Yeah, Pennsylvania Ellie Wynn is covered in snow. Yeah. God is love. Hello. Welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Always glad to see you. Kim Math or Math. Forgive me if I messed that up. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Yeah, good. Yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, Christmas music this year came on like October something. I was shocked. I'm like, what? This was Lowe's. One side of the Lowe's was like Christmas. The middle was Thanksgiving and the end was Halloween. I'm like, okay, is it me or what? No. I'm literally looking at 3 different holidays in the same store. She prays 808. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says Ola Tamra. Thank you for bringing so much clarity to the lives of us that need answers. You're welcome. And thank you for that humbling comment. So glad. So glad. Okay. A few more comments, guys. Mr. Frederick. Hello. Welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Yeah. Isn't it? It's a painful reality that this happens. Yeah. Tammy Nicely says, Tamara, can betrayal trauma come from a mother stealing your stuff and going through your stuff that's in your personal space? My mom has stolen a lot of sentimental photos, amongst other things. So sad. I wouldn't say it's a betrayal trauma necessarily because it's lacking those two conditions. The one condition would be really depending on something or someone an institution or someone, I should say, depending on them for something, right? That has something to do with your basic needs, and trusting that individual or that institution. So trust, dependency, those two have to be present. And there has to be some kind of trauma that's associated with the betrayal. Now, if, let's say, mom took and threw all your things into a fire pit and burned it all up, and you didn't know what was happening, and you can't get those memories back, that may be devastating. Will it be a trauma? Most likely not. Now, if mom, however, burns all your things, donates all your things, kicks you out of the home, spreads rumors and lies about you, and somehow interferes with your job, you getting fired, possibly even getting in the middle of all of your other relationships, now we might be able to say that that's betrayal trauma. Why? Because there's cumulative trauma here. She's doing a variety of things to you that you have no control over. You can't stop her, right? And you may have been dependent on her in some fashion. I lived in her house. I needed money from her. You know what I mean, Tammy? So those conditions have to be met for sure. James McDonald says self-awareness and having the ability to have complete honesty goes a long way towards your own healing. Yeah, in my opinion, it very much does. Anytime I have a family that tends to be full of lies, the number one condition that I tell them has to happen. It has to be met in my therapy. I'm not going to do therapy with you if you are going to be someone that's going to hide details, lie, hold dishonesty, the list goes on, right? The number one condition I ask all my clients to meet is honesty, clarity, honesty, rawness, authenticity. We're not going to hide. We're not going to lie. I even have a no secrets policy. If you ask me to keep a secret, then we're going to have to figure out a different way here to deal with the situation, to address it. Are there things that I should keep in confidence because it's confidentiality and privacy? Absolutely. But in order to heal and grow and change in therapy, everybody has to be willing to be honest, right? Transparent. And there can't be, as you put it, James McDonald, basically dishonesty. There has to be some honesty at every juncture of therapy. So I totally get you. You cannot heal unless you have that. Some people feel like, oh, I'm just going to go to therapy and I'm just going to lie my way through some things. That's not going to work. You're cheating yourself, right? And some families feel like, oh, I'm just going to lie about that or cover that because, that person doesn't have the right to know that, or that person doesn't need to know that, or that's really not an important detail. It's all important, right? Has to be honesty. That's number one. Dina says, my question in context is, my sibling judges a lot, mainly because I moved in with my now husband for a year before marriage due to circumstances out of our control. She now holds this against us. I see what you mean. Yeah. I don't know, Dina. I don't know if I have anything to give to that. I'll have to go back. I'll have to scroll back to make sure that I look at everything you said so that I can properly answer you. I'm gonna try my best to come back to that. Black Wolverine, number one, hello, welcome. Glad to see you back in tonight's live chat. Says, I love most of my family members from a distance. Yeah, I don't blame you. Sometimes that's the only way you can love them, right? Is from a distance, a safe distance. Starburster, my last one before I go back to the content. Hello and welcome. Always glad to see you. Totally love that screen name. I get so excited when I see Starburst. Okay. How does this impact you? Well, in a variety of ways. I've narrowed it down to 6 ways that this impacts you. Research in psychology on betrayal trauma, and I've seen this in my work over the past 15 years and with colleagues, that the number one way that betrayal trauma impacts you is it kind of triggers and encourages this negative appraisal of yourself and all of your future relationships, right? It kind of causes you to look at yourself negatively. You go within and say, okay, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I must have been not loving enough. I was never wanted. Nobody really seems to care about me. Now that I think about it, I've always been betrayed. Those, that's another negative self-appraisal. I'm stupid. One of my kids, he's 11 years old. He says this to me all the time, and I so hate to hear it. He's so far, far above stupid. But in his words, he says to me, Miss Hammer, I'm just a stupid kid. And so he has these deep-seated negative self-appraisals. And that can be a place of long-term healing for a lot of people that has experienced betrayal trauma, because you develop over time this negative self-appraisal. If you stay in that negative self-appraisal mindset for many, many years, months, weeks, then that can move up a notch to negative appraisal of all relationships, right? Then you start looking at your relationship with Susu over there. You start looking at your relationship over there with Bob. Then you start looking at your relationship with your boss. Then you start looking at relationships that could turn romantic negatively. All of your relational experiences and all of your theories about yourself can then turn negative. So negative self-appraisal. You may also develop over time a confused mindset, right? I don't know what to think is what I hear many of my clients say. Some of the research I reviewed for this live chat tonight, there were different statements that participants in a research study had made. And a very common confused mindset is, I'm unlovable. And because I'm unlovable, I'm supposed to be in these kind of relationships. That can also be a negative self-appraisal, but it is also a confused mindset. It says, I really don't know who I am. I don't know what my value is. So I approach the world from that angle. You may also experience kind of a suppressed variety of emotions and awareness of betrayal. So you may experience kind of like this suppression of reality, suppression of an awareness that you have been and are being, or, in some capacity has been betrayed. You may experience suppression of feelings of depression and anxiety, right? Feeling kind of like you're walking in a dream, or things are not real, or that you're emotionally detached. You may experience that, derealization, derealization and detachment. There's another one I'm forgetting. I'm blanking on it. Depersonalization, right? Feeling like you're walking in a dream. Things are not real. You're detached. There we go. It just came back to me. Dissociation is another experience. You may also find yourself suppressing the reality that you are being betrayed. Remember, betrayal blindness, it's kind of this sometimes a very automatic form of survival. You know what? I know he's betraying me, but I'm not going to look at that. I can't. It's going to destroy our marriage. It's going to destroy our relationship. It's going to destroy my view of having the perfect life. It's going to destroy my view of being lovable and attractive and appealing and loving and, caring and wanted, right? So some people just say, you know what? I'm going to suppress the reality that I'm being betrayed. I know I am, but I'm going to act like I'm not because it's easier. You may experience generalization and polarization. Polarization is black and white thinking, Oh, I was betrayed. I must not be lovable. I was betrayed, so I must not be someone that's worth being honest with. That's black and white thinking. There's no gray. There's no other way to look at it. It's just black or white. Generalization. I'm going to take my feelings of how I feel now and these feelings that make me feel so unlovable and so betrayed. I'm going to take these feelings and I'm going to spread it. I'm going to generalize it to other relationships in my life. And so now I'm not only going to close the door to the person who has betrayed me, but I'm also going to close the door to Sue, Bob, Joe, and Bill. Why? Because I have generalized this experience of being betrayed to other people. You may also find yourself sinking in cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions, you can also call them thinking errors. And that's basically where, you're thinking of things in a skewed way. And it's really hard to connect with reality because you're seeing it in a skewed way that it isn't, Having this future-oriented belief system that you're going to fail at anything you put your mind to, that's a cognitive distortion. We call that fortune telling. You know, somebody walked by you and they look at you and you read on their face something that may or may not be there. Mind reading is another cognitive distortion, which, you know, you look at that person's face and you say, you know what? This person is judging me. They may not. They may be thinking about the money that they don't have to pay for what's in their shopping cart, right? But for you, you look at that person's face and you see a judgment. So we call that mind reading. That's another cognitive distortion. And another cognitive distortion would be polarization, which is what I, explained earlier, polarization. And you may also find yourself being re-victimized over time. You've experienced betrayal trauma at the hands of somebody that you were dependent upon and you trusted, right? And so now you're being re-victimized. How? Because now you're in another similar relationship and you are experiencing betrayal blindness, right? You're closing your eye intentionally or unintentionally. And so you're allowing yourself to be hurt, right? So you're being re-victimized. Let's say you go to therapy after years of being betrayed, and now you're experiencing cumulative trauma, right? Because you had childhood trauma in your adolescence, trauma in your adult life, right? So now you're experiencing all of this trauma and you go to therapy, and guess what? You have to relive the trauma. You're being re-victimized in a sense, especially if you're not ready to heal. Another way of being re-victimized is getting into another relationship where you are dependent on somebody and you fully trust them and they betray you as well. And so now you're being re-victimized. Let me say too, guys, briefly before I go to the chat box and we wrap up, let me also say that institutions can cause betrayal trauma as well. Now, research on betrayal trauma with institutions highlights that religious organizations or churches, schools or mental health organizations, offices, or any kind of public place that's an institution, like a workplace, they can also cause betrayal trauma. And believe it or not, it can happen even at the hands of a therapist. Let's say, for example, you've had a series of betrayal traumas in your life, right? And you see your traumatic experiences as all betrayals. Okay, because some of this is subjective as well. I can tell you what betrayal trauma is, but you have to tell me if you feel that you have also experienced multiple betrayals, So let's say you go to a mental health clinic, a community mental health center, where everybody kind of knows everybody. Staff knows you, you know staff, you see family photos up on the glass, everybody's kind of in this community together and they go to this one place, right? So let's say your therapist talks to you, comes from the back office and says, you ready to go? And you're sitting in the waiting room and you say, yep. You're trying to get your bags or get your book or get situated so you can go to see your therapist. And let's say your therapist stands there in the waiting room and says, how did things go with your mom this weekend? Right? So now whoever's in that waiting room knows that you had an issue with your mom, or that something happened there, right? You may go to the front counter after your therapy session and the person behind the desk says something that you didn't want revealed to maybe the people who are on the side of you or waiting in the waiting room. So you may feel betrayed there, right? And then let's say you email your therapist and tell them how disappointed you are that they said something in the waiting room about your family dynamic that anybody could kind of manipulate. And let's say your therapist emails you back and says, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it that way. And you say, you know what, I think I'm just going to just stop therapy. And, I feel like I just want to die. It's like I'm being mistreated all over again. Your therapist can then cause an additional trauma by contacting the police to go to your front door, knock, and make sure you're okay. And the police catch you in a state of feeling distraught and emotional, and they take you and put you in the hospital against your will. Boom. There's a whole series of cumulative, I'll put it this way, it's cumulative experience of trauma all over again. So an institution or people within an institution can cause betrayal trauma as well. It's not just family and relationships. Okay, guys, I feel like I've out-talked my whole brain. I'm so tired. I'm going to go back to the chat box so we can wrap up. I'm sure you guys have experienced all of this, right? You may be wondering, how do you deal with this? I think that I'm going to allow my podcast interview to come out. I'm going to, again, make sure I post that information in the description box. I'm going to post the information of the person who interviewed me, because in that interview, I talk about how to heal from this, how to manage it. So we're not going to talk about that on this channel just yet or right now, but if you would like me to in the future, let me know. Okay. The Good Glow. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says I've been no contact with my biological mother for excuse me. I don't see where you completed that. So I'm just going to leave it at I've been no contact with my biological mother. We're going to talk about going no contact tomorrow. So please join me if you want to learn a little bit more about the psychology of going no contact around holiday time. I think a lot of people are experiencing this for sure. Yeah. Sigma INFJ says, once an abuser, always an abuser. Once a thief, always a thief. I think so too. Now, do I believe in the power of change? Yeah. Change? Yes. Do I believe in the power of forgiveness? Yes. Do I believe that people can grow and alter the way that they used to be? Absolutely. But how often does that genuinely happen is the question, you know? Yeah. Yep. I'm just going to put your comment up there so people can see it. Kim Math says betrayal is a broken heart trusting and having another manipulating and using your vulnerability. Yeah, having another manipulate you. I'm going to add those words to the sentence. And using your vulnerability. It's abuse and another living a double life. Yes. Betrayal is someone who is callous and cold. Betrayal is someone who is callous and cold. Betrayal is someone who is also nonchalant, right? Lacking social skills, lacking personality skills, lacking an awareness of boundaries. I mean, we could just go down the whole line, you know? Sometimes a person who has betrayed you has as I stated earlier, a personality pathology. And that personality pathology can really lead to how they respond to you after they've betrayed you, right? It can kind of give you some insight. So let's say somebody that you've been married to for the past 20 years, all of a sudden feels that he needs to come out and tell you he's been in love with another woman, right? Or a man who he has been dating and seeing for the past 10 years of your 20-year marriage, right? That's a true heartbreak, right? Because now you have to try to work everything out in your mind. And that can take days, months, years, the list goes on, you know? So that individual may have a personality pathology though. So let's say you guys go to therapy and you're trying to figure out why they would betray you for 10 years. If you have an avoidant personality, you have an antisocial personality that you're dealing with, or if you're dealing with a histrionic personality, you can expect some chaos to happen, or you can expect that individual to really avoid or minimize the pain that you are experiencing. So, Kim, betrayal is someone who is callous and cold, but it can also be somebody who's a sociopath and could care less, somebody who's a histrionic personality and exaggerates and blows things up, and you can't have a conversation with them because they fly off the handle all the time. It can also be an individual who's very nonchalant and indifferent. That could be a schizoid, or that could be an avoidant personality, you know? For those of you who are not aware of schizoid personality disorder, I'm doing a video for you guys for next week on that. So I'm not going to go too far into that, but a schizoid personality, just think of a person who is socially anxious, right? Socially inept, has bizarre and odd, eccentric ways that they think about life and engage in life. And they have absolutely no interest in being with other people. They are actually very content being on their own, being away by themselves, maybe in the woods, all by themselves, right? They are very indifferent to how you think, how you feel, how you see reality. You know, we're going to talk more about a schizoid personality, but you could also be married to somebody with a schizoid personality. You can also be raised by somebody like that. And your emotions are heightened because they've betrayed you. And all the while, they're nonchalant. They're indifferent. You know, They don't have the capacity to feel. Leslie Sturm, hello and welcome. Glad to see you back in tonight's live chat. Says, I decided to cancel the debt. The person owes me knowing I may never get it. The debt of an apology I'm owed. I gave the issue to God and handle and moving on. And I'm moving on. Yeah, that's how you have to do it. Yeah. You know, usually if I'm praying or I'm reading my Bible and I'm praying, as soon as I'm done praying, off my hands. Why? Because it's too heavy to carry, right? And that's the whole purpose of having faith and being in a religion and having a spiritual experience and awareness of God, right? That's the part, that's the best part, right? Is being able to say, you know what? I can't, God, here you are, you know, handing it up to him. Here you go. Because I don't know if I can do this. You know, I'm down here trying to manage all of this, but I know you up there can manage it much better. You know what I mean? So very much agree with that. Starburst says, wow, I heard about this today. The keeping you codependent on the abuser. Yeah. They can keep you codependent and keep you stuck and intentionally create a traumatic bond in an attempt to take you down. That's kind of how that goes. Queen Butterfly, hello and welcome. Haven't seen you in a while, so welcome. Says toxic family is draining. It's draining, disappointing, tiring. You know, the list can go on. Nadia Concealent, I'm so sorry. I messed that up. I know I did. Welcome. Glad to see you. I don't remember seeing you, so welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Courtney Fraser, I am so not going to forget you before we sign off. Hello and welcome. Hope you are doing well. Always glad to see you in a live chat. All right, guys. Liberty Cam, I haven't seen you in a while. Hello. Welcome, my friend. Glad to see you. Hope you're doing well. Silent Walk, hello and welcome. Glad to see you tonight. If I haven't already welcomed you. Elizabeth Pepper, welcome. Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. First of all, I'm glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Secondly, betrayal blindness is self-deception. Yes, it is. And sometimes it's a really deep self-deception where it surpasses denial. Because sometimes betrayal blindness says, continue to betray me. I'm just going to act like it's not happening. You know, have you ever heard of situations? And there's an actual situation. There's a famous case, and I'm going to post that in the description box for you if I can remember. There's a case where there was 7 children in a house with mom and dad. Both were religious leaders of their church or their sect, if you will. Dad was sexually violating his 2 daughters. Mom knew up until a certain point. At first, she didn't know that he was sexually violating both of their daughters. You know, she thought he was getting out of bed to go get a drink of water. She thought he was getting out of bed at night to go and read a newspaper because he couldn't sleep. You know, she thought maybe he had a patient phone call. He was a podiatrist. You know, he led a religious congregation. So maybe somebody in that congregation was calling him. So that's where he's going. No, he was going to his daughter's bedroom to violate her every single night. When some bits and pieces of that truth came out, his wife went into complete betrayal blindness mode, you know, and she knew every night where he was going, and she would not get out of that bed to go protect and save her daughter. She allowed it. She let it happen. So betrayal trauma is far beyond just self-deception. You know, it can be very, very pathological. Okay, guys, I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any of you. Ellie Wen says they are not simply apathetic. They are indifferent to abusing, exploiting, and harming you. There you go. There you go. Yes, Orlando, a 3-year-old. Absolutely. Elizabeth, that was a good one. Love you for that comment. I'm going to star that comment. You know, when I said it, I was thinking that. I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe I do have maybe I do have about 90 million clients and I don't know it. You never know. Right? Elizabeth, I love that. That's a good point. M. and Odell says it's too difficult to deal with betrayal when there's no other escape. I very much agree. Very much agree. That's where betrayal blindness sometimes comes in as well. Okay, Josh Wayne, hello, long time no see. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Says I learned about ADHD time blindness from marijuana-induced psychosis. Then I learned about betrayal blindness, avoidant personality disorder, and narcissism right after her reactionary abuse. I'm almost healed though. That is good. That is good. Ouch. That's a lot, right? That's a lot. Okay, I'm scrolling one last time, guys. Daryl Harris, hello. Welcome. Always glad to see you in a live chat as well. Kendi May, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Says, thank you for what you've done and continue to do for this community and beyond. Your brilliant brain, empathy, and ability to connect is truly appreciated. Thank you so much. That is so touching. Thank you so much for that. That's beautiful. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for being on the channel, supporting the channel, and just saying that. Thank you. Eye on the Sparrow. My mom would love that. We're going to wrap up here, guys, in literally a second. Eye on the Sparrow. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to have you. Says, I've had multiple forms of betrayal throughout my life from a young age. And it was this year that I ever had an aha moment that I have betrayal trauma. My Lord. Yeah. Yeah. Let me throw out here, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. Let me throw out here that the symptoms of betrayal trauma are very similar to the symptoms of complex PTSD. Okay, so you want to keep in mind betrayal trauma can lead to damage to the amygdala, damage to the prefrontal cortex, right? Those frontal lobes I talk about all the time that has a lot to do with some personality development, decision making, impulse control, inattention. The amygdala cements our emotional memories, right? Good and bad. The hippocampus gives us that context to the emotional memory, right? I was in a tragic tornado, and I remember these sights, smells, and things that I am hearing. But my hippocampus also tells me I was wearing this. I was in this part of the basement. My mom was over there. It gives context sometimes to the trauma. So there's neurological impact, you know, and with betrayal trauma and complex PTSD, there's flashbacks, there's nightmares, right? There's constant memories that are painful. There's also physiological symptoms like being in fight or flight mode, right? Having physical aches and pains all the time. Fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis can be triggered sometimes. Other autoimmune diseases can be triggered, you know? You can also deal with chronic stress, and acute stress that is so overwhelming that you just feel like you're under stress all the time, right? Your fight or flight mode doesn't turn off. It's on at all times. All of these things, guys, are symptoms of betrayal trauma. If you've had a betrayal. So sometimes it is really difficult for a therapist to decipher, is this complex PTSD or is this betrayal trauma, right? But keep in mind that symptoms can overlap and they look very, very similar. Okay, guys, let's wrap up here. Okay. Let me read. Jamila Brill says, yeah, dysfunctional families are in pain everywhere, sadly. That is true. There's a lot more dysfunctional families in this world than we care to realize, right? Guys, thank you so much for being with me tonight on this live chat. I feel like I need a break. Okay. You know, this was a tough topic, right? So I hope you guys get some downtime tonight, that you have a good Friday night. I'm coming back tomorrow with a hopefully refreshed mind, and I can give you guys some information that you haven't really processed or thought about or known about in regards to going no contact and really going no contact around the holidays. There's research to suggest more people are going no contact with their family than they ever have before. So join me tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. I will see you then, guys. Have a wonderful Friday. Love you much. Bye-bye.